Hey, what's up gamers? We need to talk about Resident Evil 9 Requiem, because this isn't just another sequel dropping in 2026. This is Capcom's most ambitious survival horror project ever. We're talking dual protagonist, path tracing, and return to Raccoon City that's gonna blow your mind. But with a premium price tag of $70, is this gonna be worth your money? Let's break it down and find out if you should buy day one. Let's break it down to find out if you should buy it day one, wait for reviews, or skip it entirely. First things first, Resident Evil 9 Requiem launches on February the 27th, 2026. PC players, they might see it as early as February the 26th on Steam, but console players are looking at the 27th across all platforms. And speaking of platforms, Capcom is going all out here. PlayStation 5, Xbox XS, PC via Steam and Epic Games Store, and Nintendo Switch 2. Yeah, Nintendo's new console is getting this beast of a game on day one, which is pretty incredible considering the technical demands we're talking about. Now, the pricing is where things get interesting. The standard edition will run you $69.99, and in UK, £59.99, which as we know now, has become the new normal for AAA releases. But Capcom's also offering a deluxe edition at $79.99 digitally, or $89.99 if you want the physical version with all bells and whistles. And for Nintendo Switch 2 owners, there's some exclusive stuff we'll get into later that might make this launch even more tempting. So let me paint you the picture here. The story centers around Grace Ashcroft, an FBI intelligence analyst who's been investigating a series of mysterious deaths across the United States. These aren't your typical murders, there's something deeply wrong here, and Grace, being the brilliant analyst she is, starts connecting dots that lead her to an abandoned hotel in the Midwest. But here's where things get personal. This is the exact same location where her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft from Resident Evil Outbreak, was murdered 8 years ago. Talk about emotional baggage, right? Now, while Grace is conducting her investigation, the local police have a problem. One of their officers goes missing in the hotel. This brings in our second protagonist, and honestly, the character everyone wanted to see return, Leon S. freaking Kennedy. He's not the rookie cop from Raccoon City anymore. No, this is Leon as a seasoned DSO agent who's seen it all, done it all, and somehow keeps surviving the worst bioterrorism incidents the world has ever known. The genius of this setup is that Grace and Leon, they represent two completely different approaches to horror. Grace is all about psychological tension, investigation, and that creeping dread that makes Resident Evil so effective. She's vulnerable, she's emotionally invested because of her mother's death, and she's walking into something way bigger than she realizes. Leon, on the other hand, brings the experience, the combat skills, and that world-weary perspective of someone who's literally been through hell multiple times and just keeps getting pulled back in. Their paths converge at this hotel, and what they uncover isn't just another zombie outbreak. We're looking at a conspiracy that goes all the way back to the original Raccoon City incident in 1998. This isn't about random bioterrorism anymore. Someone is deliberately trying to recreate or, possibly, even surpass what happened in Raccoon City. The implications are massive, and both characters are forced to confront their paths in ways that are gonna hit players right in the feels. Here's where Capcom really starts innovating. The game features what's being called a almost equally split dual protagonist system. What this means is that you're not just playing a few sections as Grace and a few as Leon, you're experiencing two complete, intertwined storylines that complement each other perfectly. Grace's sections focus heavily on investigation, puzzle solving, and that psychological horror that makes you question what's real and what's not. You'll be analysing crime scenes, piecing together evidence, and slowly uncovering the truth behind this new conspiracy. But Leon, he brings something completely different to the table. His sections are more action orientated, but don't worry, this isn't Resident Evil 6 levels of Michael Bay explosions. Think Resident Evil 4's perfect balance of survival horror and combat, but refined for 2026. Leon's got the experience, the weapons training, and the tactical knowledge that Grace simply doesn't have. But here's the brilliant part. You can switch between first person and third person perspectives at any time during both character sections. This means if you want to experience Grace's psychological horror in intimate first person, you can. If you prefer the classic over-the-shoulder view for Leon's combat sequences, that's available too. It's the player's choice at its finest. The core gameplay loop integrates classic Resident Evil elements that fans love. You've got your resource management, where every bullet counts and inventory space is precious. There are environmental puzzles that require you to think creatively about your surroundings. Stealth sections let you avoid combat entirely if you're smart about it. And when things go sideways, the combat system builds on everything Capcom learned from RE4 Remake's success. It's tactical, it's tense, and it never forgets that you're supposed to feel vulnerable even when you're armed to the teeth. Now, let's talk about what really got tech enthusiasts excited. Resident Evil 9 is the first game in the series to feature full path tracing on PC. For those who don't follow graphics technology religiously, path tracing is essentially the holy grail of realistic lighting. We're talking about photorealistic reflections that actually make sense, shadows that behave like real shadows, and global illumination that makes every scene look like it was filmed with a professional camera crew. This isn't just marketing buzz, the tech demos Nvidia has been showing off are actually impressive. But here's where it gets even better for PC gamers. The game supports Nvidia's DLSS 4 with multi-frame generation, which is basically like getting a free performance upgrade. DLSS 4 can generate multiple frames between each traditional rendered frame, meaning you can run the game at higher resolutions and frame rates without your graphic card melting into a puddle of silicon and regret. For a game with this level of visual fragility, that's not just nice to have, it's practically essential. But what's really impressive though, is how reasonable the system requirements are for a game pushing this level of visual fidelity. Minimum specs call for the Intel Core i5-8500 or AMD Ryzen 5 3500, paired with a GTX 1660 or RX 5500 XT. Recommended specs bump this up to an Intel Core i7-8700 or AMD Ryzen 5 5500 with an RTX 2060 Super 8GB or RX 6600 8GB. For a game featuring full path tracing, those requirements are surprisingly reasonable. The RE engine continues to prove why it's one of the best optimized game engines in the industry. So let's address the elephant in the room, because this is what has the long-term fans scratching their heads. Capcom showed footage featuring what appeared to be a bustling city environment with moving cars, pedestrians walking around, and urban activity that looks like it belongs in Watch Dogs or Grand Theft Auto rather than Resident Evil. For a series that traditionally thrives on isolation, claustrophobia, and the unknown, this is a pretty dramatic departure from the formula. Now, before we grab our pitchforks, let's consider a few things. First, this might just be a tech demo sequence designed to show off Nvidia's path tracing. Gaming companies often create these showcase moments that don't necessarily represent the core gameplay experience. Second, even if this city environment is in the game, it doesn't automatically mean Resident Evil has lost its way. Urban horror can be incredibly effective when done right. Think about how creepy empty city streets can be at night, or how overwhelming it feels to be surrounded by people who might suddenly turn into threats. What we do know is that the game returns to Raccoon City, the location that started it all. But this isn't the Raccoon City you remember from 1998. This is Raccoon City 28 years after the nuclear sterilization operation that ended the original outbreak. The city has been rebuilt, but the scars remain. The psychological trauma of what happened there lingers in the architecture, in the people who dared to return, and in the conspiracy that's once again brewing beneath the surface. The hotel where Grace and Leon investigation begins serves as a microcosm of Raccoon City's larger problems. It's abandoned, decaying, and filled with secrets that someone desperately wants to keep buried. If Capcom can maintain that sense of dread and mystery while expanding the scope to include more urban environments, this could actually represent evolution rather than betrayal of the series' roots. Alright, let's talk about money, because this is where a lot of you are going to make your decision. The standard edition at $69.99 gets you the base game, plus a pre-order bonus costume for Grace called Apocalypse. That's it. But honestly, for most players, that's probably going to be enough. You're getting the full story experience, both protagonists and the gameplay innovations, and access to whatever post-launch content Capcom decides to add. The Deluxe edition is where things get interesting. For an extra $10 digitally or $20 physically, you're getting 5 additional costumes for Grace, including Lady Dimitrescu outfit that's already generating buzz in the community. You also get 2 visual filters, 4 weapon skins, 2 charms, and something called the Raccoon City Classic Audio Pack, and letters from 1998 files that presumably provide additional lore and backstory. The physical deluxe edition justifies its higher price with a steelbox case and a limited edition card featuring Grace Ashcroft. For collectors, this might be worth the premium, especially since these Resident Evil special editions tend to appreciate in value over time. Nintendo Switch 2 owners get some exclusive options that are actually pretty compelling. There's a generation pack that bundles Requiem with Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 7 for $89.99. If you haven't played those games yet, that's actually a solid value proposition. There's also a Theme Switch 2 Pro controller for $99.99. Capcom is clearly betting big on Nintendo's new console, and early adopters are getting some nice perks because of it. While we don't have full reviews yet since the game hasn't been released, the early impressions from gaming events have been overwhelmingly positive. CNET's reviewer who played a demo at the Summer Game Fest described it as extremely messed up, but in the best way possible, praising how the game built tension and delivered actual scares without relying on cheap jump scares or overly scripted sequences. Tom's Guide went even further, with this previewer calling it already my most anticipated game of 2026, and specifically praising the incredible realistic graphics and moody lighting. The game almost won Most Anticipated Game at True Gaming's award show, which is interesting because True Gaming tends to be more critical and analytical than some other gaming outlets. Their recognition suggests that Requiem isn't just generating hype through marketing, it's actually delivering something that industry professionals find actually exciting. What's particularly encouraging is that the positive impressions aren't just coming from the usual suspects. Gaming outlets that typically approach Resident Evil games with skepticism seem actually impressed by what Capcom is attempting here. The dual protagonist system, the technical innovations, and the return to Raccoon City are all hitting the right notes with people who have been critical of the series' direction in recent years. Now, let's pump the brakes for a second and talk about what could go wrong here. First, there's the Windows 11 requirement for PC gaming. If you're still running Windows 10, you're out of luck unless you upgrade. That might not sound like a big deal. Upgrading your operating system to just play one game is a significant ask, especially when Windows 11 has had its fair share of gaming related issues since launch. The city environment controversial is real, and it's not just about fans being resistant to change. Resident Evil has built its identity on isolation, claustrophobia, and the fear of the unknown. When you introduce bustling city streets and moving cars and pedestrians, you risk losing what makes the series special. If these urban sections dominate the game or feel out of place totally, it could undermine the entire experience. There's also the question of whether the dual protagonist system will actually work in practice. Dividing gameplay between 2 characters with different skill sets and narrative perspectives is ambitious, but it also risks creating a disjointed experience where neither character gets enough development time. We've seen other games attempt similar systems with mixed reviews. Sometimes one character's sections feel significantly more enjoyable than the others, creating pacing issues that can drag down the entire experience. The price point is another consideration. $70 has become the new normal for AAA releases. That's still a significant investment for most gamers. When you factor in the deluxe edition extras and potential DLC, you're looking at potentially spending over $100 on a single game. That's a lot of money, especially when you consider that Resident Evil games, they typically go on sale within 6 months of release. So here's where we land after breaking down everything we know about Resident Evil 9. This is clearly Capcom's most ambitious survival horror project to date, and they're pulling out all the stops on the technical side. The dual protagonist system is ambitious in a way that could either revolutionize how we experience horror games, or become a cautionary tale about overcomplicating established formulas. Grace's psychological horror approach and Leon's action horror expertise could create the perfect yin and yang that elevates both characters, or it could result in a fragmented experience that doesn't fully satisfy fans of either style. The return of Raccoon City is a masterstroke for a narrative perspective. After nearly 3 decades, revisiting the location that started it all with new characters who have personal stakes in uncovering the truth about what really happened there has the potential to be one of the most emotionally resonant stories in the series' history. The early impressions from the game and events have been overwhelmingly positive, with even typically skeptical outlets expressing actual excitement about what Capcom is attempting here. That doesn't guarantee the final product will live up to the hype, but it does suggest that the concerns about the city setting and dual protagonist system might be overblown once players actually get their hands on the game. My recommendation: buy on day one if you're a Resident Evil fan who appreciates innovation and has the budget to spare. But wait for reviews if you're concerned about the city setting being too much of a departure from traditional Resident Evil, or if $70 is a significant investment that you just can't afford to gamble on. The game will still be there in a few weeks, and you'll have the benefit of knowing exactly how well the dual protagonist system works in practice, or you could just skip entirely if you prefer pure action over survival horror. This game launches February the 27th, 2026, and based on everything we've seen, Requiem appears posed to deliver a memorable horror experience that pushes the franchise forward while honouring its roots. So that's everything you need to know about Resident Evil 9 Requiem before you decide to buy. What do you think about the dual protagonist system? Are you excited or nervous about the city setting? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, do me a favour and hit that like and subscribe for more gaming guides. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.